So we are going to get started. Thank you all for coming tonight. So I am very excited about this. Event planning is one of the things that students tell me very often that they would like to go into, and this will be a really great chance for you to hear from 3 experts in the area, and they'll be able to tell you all about what it actually entails. We'll get to that in a minute. Okay, so I will introduce my guests here. We have Ashley Way, who graduated in 2020. She majored in history. While she was a student at Christendom, Ashley was a member of the Student Activities Council, where she began her career in event planning. She is currently the Events and Catering Coordinator at George Washington's Mount Vernon, where she is the lead in catering sales, VIP visits, and the coordination of private events. In her time at Mount Vernon, she has also been a lead planner for the estate's public events, including the biannual wine festival and holiday fireworks shows. Can't wait to hear about the VIP visits. And who might have come. All right, and then we have Maghee Fleischer, who graduated in 2024 and majored in English. While she was in school, she was involved in SAC as well, on the graphic design team to help plan school-wide events, and she held the position of creative director and editor-in-chief for Metanoia magazine. She has extensive practical experience in graphic design, hand lettering art, and floral design, having attended the Catherine Muller Flower School in Paris and London. Very cool. Maghee joined Hewell Events Group in 2024, where she plans large-scale and high-end galas and conferences for organizations in the conservative movement, along with Catholic and mission-aligned clients. And she gets to travel all over for her job, too. All right, and then finally, we have Nicole Castellan, who graduated in 2019. She majored in history. After graduation, she got her start in events as the event service manager for Downtown Catering, which used to be run by Mr. Brown, and is no longer. She later returned to the college to work briefly for the Rome program before rejoining the hospitality industry at the Westin Arlington, where she worked as senior conference services manager, coordinating all major room blocks and conferences at the hotel, from the time the contract is signed through the day of the event. She now works, brand new, as the meetings and events manager at Pharmacy Quality Alliance, and she lives in Alexandria with her husband, Michael, who is here with us tonight, which is great. So give them a little round of applause as a welcome as we get some more people in here. Is it hot in here, guys? Yes, it's pretty warm. It's crazy 70-degree weather in November. Okay, hopefully we can all manage through. Actually, would anybody be willing to go open the side doors to let some air in? Teresa's on it. Walter, thank you. Yay, Walter. We love having Walter at Life on Taps. Listen, one day you all might come back and do a Life on Tap, and Walter will come to see you. So, yes, it's very exciting. Okay, so let's dive into this. Tell us, Ashley, how you knew you wanted to pursue events and kind of how was your path to getting there?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I'd say, honestly, I kind of stumbled into it. I started around high school being interested in trying to help with weddings of, older cousins I knew that were getting married. And then when I came to Christendom, I just started helping out with SAC. It seemed fun to put together these gatherings for people, moments that, brought together community. And from there, it just kind of grew. And then I realized, I didn't know it used to be a job. I thought it, I thought it was you just do it for fun. And I didn't realize you could really make it into a full career. So it was kind of serendipitous in a way.
Sure. And then I'll have you tell us about your internship later on that you did. All right, Maghee, tell us about you and how you got interested in events.
Yeah, so can everyone hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect. So for me, it was, I guess, kind of similar. I had not planned on doing event planning. Funny enough, my mom was an event planner, so growing up, she always talked about it, and it just sounded like the coolest job. She traveled a lot, did meeting planning, all that kind of thing. When I came to Christendom, I was involved in SEC and always really enjoyed it. But then I didn't really think of doing event planning for sure until Easter of my senior year. I was over at the McFadden family's house, who I'm sure you all know. Cece McFadden is a good friend of mine. And Mr. McFadden told me about this company, Hewell Events Group, and asked me what my plan was after graduation. And I was planning on going home to Colorado to do floral design full time. But he said, you should just apply for this position. I think you might like it. So I applied, and that's worked out. And then here I am. So I moved out to DC and have been with you all ever since. So it's just a little over a year now. So kind of stumbled into it as well, I guess.
Okay. And what about you, Nicole?
For me, I, growing up, either wanted to be a chef or an interior designer, and somehow I found the perfect blend for me in event management and planning. I worked in the catering world for a majority of the last 6 years, and I also love seeing the final scene. So when I stumbled into events would have been, I had an internship my senior year of high school at the Willard Hotel, which is a historic property down in DC, in the catering and conference service management office, and I loved it, but I kind of put it back out of my mind. I'm like, oh, I'm going to Christendom. I came in, I was going to transfer, I wanted to study interior design, ended up studying history instead, and also had a change of plans right after I graduated. I had a job in graphic design. That was what I was going to do. I had done work for the marketing department. I ran the yearbook. I was in the graphic design world and had a change of heart. And Mike Brown, I texted him and I was like, hey, you're in the events world. I had worked a few weddings for him and asked, and he's like, oh, I don't know of anything. And like 5 days later, he called me. He's like, just kidding. Will you come work for us? And that was a change of plans right after graduation. And ever since, I've loved events. Every time I've stepped out of it just a foot, I end up back into it. So.
Okay. All right. Oh, good. We've got the door shut. Everybody's in. Everybody's got a place to sit. Okay. So it's really funny. I've told several people this, but I met with Nicole her senior year because that was my first year here, and she told me she was interested in events, and I was like, well, you know, this girl over here is interested in events, and this one's interested in it too. You all should come together and create your own Catholic event planning company, and I still think you all should do that because there are a number of you in here that are interested in it. So these ladies can help you make that a reality at some point. So, okay. Tell us now about the opportunities you took advantage of. What jobs did you have that kind of set you up for this? What kinds of internships, that kind of stuff? So, Ashley, I know you had an internship.
Yes, I started my junior year. I did the internship at the Heritage Foundation in their special events department. And I would say DC itself is a huge event city. There are many different internships, and there's different kinds that cater to an event position. If even starting by working in a restaurant, that's hospitality, and events are hospitality. So if you're doing anything that's serving people, serving guests, if you do any level of organization, that's relevant. And so there are a ton of different careers. Even an admin position, you can shift into events because half of events is admin work. So.
Okay, which we will get into later, yes. And your Heritage internship was specifically in their events department, right?
Yes, yeah, they had a conference services department and then a special event planning department, so I was in the special events office.
Okay, nice, yeah, and we still have students going into Heritage internships, which is great. So, okay, tell us about your kind of story and internships and other stuff, because you didn't necessarily do a lot of event planning here.
Yeah, so I mean, I was part of SAC, but the events that my company does are very different than that. But I would still say, if you're interested in event planning, definitely be involved in SAC. It's a great practice. But for me, I just really encourage you all, because I didn't necessarily have an internship in event planning, just really develop your skills now in anything that you do. Like I would say, if, you know, no matter what it is, as long as you excel and you do your best in that, that's going to be a skill that you could use for event planning. For example, something like taking notes in class does not seem important, but for my position on my team, every site visit we go to, every call we have with the client, I have to take notes. And that seems so small and dumb, honestly, but my team really relies on that. And they'll look and see what measurements the riser is for the band or something like that. So really any skill you can develop now in college, whether it's being detail-oriented with your classes, multitasking, being involved in different groups on campus, that's super important. Kind of like she was saying, any customer service job you have is going to be applicable. I worked at a flower shop, which is obviously not events, but it's a vendor that we use for events. We always hire a florist. So, and I had to engage with customers when I worked at the floral shop, and now I engage with clients. And so that customer service skill that I, had just for one summer after graduation has been applicable in my job now. So I would just say really develop your skills in just being detail-oriented. Small things such as like taking notes will be beneficial for your job.
I love that. I wouldn't have thought about that. But yeah, that makes perfect sense. What about you, Nicole?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said about just learning the back end of events. Like Ashley was saying, so many of these places need service help, bar backs, just being present in a restaurant, an event space, and just learning how the back end of events work before you ever want to step into the front end is definitely a huge part, because you're going to notice a lot more operationally and then be able to be more successful on the front end in directing and making sure those last minute things that went wrong were planned for more in advance. And I think there's a lot to be said of, like, I was on SAC, I was an RA, I did a ton while I was here, but I would say actually the biggest thing that translated to what I do now in the event world was I was the stage manager and producer for all of the Christendom Players shows for 7 out of the 8, so I just missed my Rome semester when I was here. And an event is a huge production, just like a stage show, so I would say that helps translate best, and learning how to delegate, learning how to take an idea all the way to fruition of the stage show. Liz Feckler is like telling me to come over to rehearsals after this to say hi. It's just like, how can you translate what you do here into what you want to do next? And a lot more applies than you think.
Yeah. All right, so I want to get into the day-to-day stuff, because I think it's really important to understand how does it actually look, because we might all have an idea of what we think event planning is, but what is it truly? So a couple questions. What do you do all day, really and truly? How often do you work evenings, weekends? What does it look like? How does a day look different in the office versus on an event day? And then also, I just want to point out, none of you plan weddings, is that correct?
I did for a
You
while.
did.
I don't anymore, but
Okay.
I did.
Okay, so you can speak a little bit to that. So I think we might do another Life on Tap in the future with just wedding planners, because that's another thing people say they want to do events or weddings. So I want to point that out, that they don't necessarily specialize in weddings. So, okay, Nicole, tell us a little bit about your day-to-day.
My day-to-day. So I did recently change jobs. I'm 5 weeks into a new job, so I'm going to speak a lot more to what I was doing for the last 4 years, more than what I do right now, because I'm still learning it. But I was working in a hotel setting, so I operated in a team of like 85, 100 employees on a day-to-day, depending on if you count all the departments. But inside of that, I worked in the sales department. And it's a really great start if you want to get into the event world. In my opinion, you don't need any background to be a sales coordinator. Our sales coordinator didn't even go to college, so you're one step up from there. But I would work with clients. I signed my own catering contracts. I did do weddings at the hotel, so I did weddings, bar mitzvahs, conferences for 10 people to 400. Room blocks only, people that are coming into Tour DC, so any side of, you know, they need somewhere to sleep, they need somewhere to eat, and they need somewhere to meet, and just all the details that go into that, and coordinating AV, room setups, menus, etc. So it was a really good overarching position, and it led me to know, hey, I really like the conference side because I like working Monday through Friday. When I worked for Professor Brown and Downtown Catering Company, my first 2 years out of college, I worked 50 to 60 hours a week. I worked Tuesday to Sunday. I absolutely love the wedding industry. I really do, and I want to get back into it. I am going to one day take Kristen's advice and start my own company. My husband hears about it all the time, my plan, but there's a time of your life where you can work that many hours, and then there's a time of your life where you want some stability. And I think all of us can speak to the conference side of events, where for the most part, we work Monday through Fridays. I worked about 1 Saturday a month at the hotel. Some months I worked 4 Saturdays a month, and then I would go 4 months without working one. So you just have to be flexible with your hours, and your day might start at noon and go to 10. It might start at 5 in the morning, like mine does next week, and go to 3 in the afternoon. It just kind of depends. But my day-to-day, it's not all about the events. You spend about 90% of your time planning for the events and 10% on event day. So it is a lot of meetings. It's a lot of redundant information and prepping people and making sure every member of the team knows what the plan is, knows how we're setting up knows all the details that are going to go into the day to make it successful. Because if we just sent one email and be like, hey, here's the plan for the day, no one would follow it. It would really be a hot mess. And I think all of us could speak to that. So it's a lot of Excel spreadsheets. It's a lot of emails. Now I work in a company that's 75% remote, so I'm on Teams meetings most of my day, which is a transition from being fully in person at the hotel. But there's a lot of prep that goes into it, but it's also a lot of fun. Like, you get to see things come together. You spend 90% of your day planning for this conference, planning for a gala, planning for a social event, and then you get to see the final picture. And I think you take a lot more joy in that than someone that just came in and set up and walked out the door.
Okay, thanks. All right, what about you, Maghee?
So there's some similarities to my job. A lot of it definitely is, like, if you're interested in event planning, a lot of it is Excel spreadsheets. It's making timelines, it's emailing clients, being on the phones with clients, taking notes on client calls. It's a lot of that kind of background work, but just really, you just have to really remember that all those small details are super important the day of the event. If I mess up on a timeline, that could throw off the audio visual team, which they won't send a cue to our speaker. So one tiny error can really affect a lot of things. So even the Excel spreadsheets do really matter. So a lot of the day-to-day is that kind of thing. But then there's also some fun stuff too. So for the kind of events we plan, we just really do galas and conferences. And our galas are just big fundraising dinners. Our events are anywhere from 150 to 1,600 guests. So they can be pretty large scale. And we have a team of about 6 people. So it's definitely a lot of juggling, and I'm the assistant, so I'm the assistant to everyone in the company. So it's a lot of just juggling tasks and assignments, and it can be anywhere from emailing a photographer to, you know, calling up someone on the audio visual team and making sure they have all the right dimensions for their stage, something like that. And then there are a lot of fun aspects of the job too. That's definitely true. We do have tastings for all of our events, which are really fun, especially when it's a gala. A lot of our clients tend to, like pretty upscale caterers. So you go to a tasting and you try 5 different appetizers, 5 different wines. Like, it's so that part of it is definitely fun. We do have to travel occasionally too to like New York City or Florida or Chicago. So we'll always have to visit the venue before the event day. So there's travel involved, which is nice. Most of my company's events are in DC though too, so it's visiting fun venues in DC, such as the Building Museum, Andrew Mellon Auditorium, which are just some fun historic places in DC. And then event days, it's definitely, this job is not a 9 to 5. Event days can be like 6 a.m. to midnight, so it's just kind of all day, on the go, anywhere from organizing the seating chart versus checking guests in at registration. Some Christendom students have worked our events. I see them in the audience. So they know they will hire students to check guests in, so I'll manage our staff. So it's definitely like a lot of different areas, management and then organizational skills as well. So it's definitely, every day is a little bit different. Some of it's just behind a computer, but some of it is a lot of on the go, running around materials, that kind of thing as well. So.
All right, how is yours, different or the same?
Yeah, jumping off of both of you, there's a lot of similarities. I'd say my job at Mount Vernon is a venue-based event coordinating position, so we are hosting external clients for their private events often. Our department does also host our own events, so like Mount Vernon throws a wine festival, we throw fireworks shows twice a year, we host a lot of high-end visits, and so the Mount Vernon Events Department takes care of the operational state of the entire property. So I'm constantly working with operations, grounds, maintenance, AV. A lot of it is building a timeline for other staff, and importantly, being a conduit between a client and a staff. Because a client will come in and they're like, I want to throw a gala evening for 900 people in a tent on the East Lawn and make it happen. And so it's working out the details. I have a lot of meetings. It's a lot of emailing. There is a level of creativity, which is really nice. Sometimes you work with a client who's very specific, and they know exactly what they want down to the detail. But other times you get a client who's like, make it happen. And then you get to have the opportunity to be creative yourself, which is really nice. So I'd say like it's very similar. I probably work 4 nights a week doing private events. Those are mostly receptions and dinners, especially in the corporate world, but it's very much a Tuesday to Thursday schedule because most corporations, they don't want to do company dinner on Friday, so that's really nice. But then we do get the conference groups that come in, and you get a client and they're like, oh, can I meet you at 5:30? And you're like, sure, I guess so. So it's flexibility is important. And similar to what Nicole said earlier, your season in life will depend on your ability to do it. Being a venue-based event coordinator, there's a lot of stability because I don't travel at all. I work only the events that happen on the property. And so that has a nice level of stability. But then with a private event, you're giving up a lot of your evenings. And so it's really not a 9-to-5 job. But if you really like it, it doesn't matter. So.
True. So you all have sort of touched on the different types of events that you plan, but I guess, so instead of doing that, can you share a little bit more about the different types of event planning? So obviously there's weddings, and then there's galas, and then there's these events that you're having. We've talked about conferences. Like, is there anything else they need to know about? Can you explain the difference? You're with a pharmacy company now, so like, what does that look like?
Yeah, so I did just switch, and I switched mainly to do something different, but I wanted to leave the space where I was solely venue-based and go work for a company with the opportunity to travel to a few different conferences and just also see the event start to finish a little more than I can in the hotel setting. So for us, we do conferences, board of director meetings, and board dinners. So one of our 2 major ones of the year is next week, so say some prayers. And in the planning for that, and I've just been joining in at the end, but the planning for that, I am emailing panelists that are speaking at our event, and I've been spending my week on panelist prep calls, just like prepping for an event like this, where I'm like, here, these are the questions you're gonna be asked. This is the order you're gonna sit in. This is what time you need to be there to get mic'd up. Basically what Kristin sent us to be here tonight, I've been doing all week for our conference. I'm going to restaurants in the area where our conference will be held and making sure that the arrangements are made for the board of director dinner. I am coordinating everyone's travel schedules that are coming in and making sure, did you actually register for the conference? Did you book your hotel? You kind of just oversee a lot as an event manager, and it has very little to do with showing up at the event. It's just making sure that you're doing a lot to facilitate everyone getting there and knowing the schedule. And we're in Excel a lot and building out like a run of show, and it could be as simple as, okay, make an announcement. In 2 minutes, lunch is going to be served. No one really thinks about it, but if you don't make the announcement, or you need to come back into the conference room. So I am now definitely in the nonprofit association side of events, but again, I've done different things. I was in the weddings full time for 2 years. At the hotel, I could have 8 events in a week at most. So I think Ashley and I kind of share that, and I like now being able to focus a lot more on like, hey, let me just put all my energy towards this quarterly meeting, this quarterly conference, and getting to see that through and really building a relationship with a team and a board members that I'm going to be meeting next week, and just making sure that every time they show up every quarter, it's like, hey, there's Nicole, and I know she took care of my hotel room, or whatever they need. You kind of become a personal assistant for the day of the conference, to whatever they might need. If they need somewhere to take a meeting, you're in charge of taking care of that. So I think there's a lot more that goes into events, and a lot of different areas of events that no one thinks about. So there's corporations all over this country that every single corporation has an event manager. So it's not just like, oh, I need to go find a catering company. I need to go find an event venue. Every single association, corporation, they have an events team. I'm one of 2 on the specific events team, but the rest of my teammates are pharmacists, but they're planning events with me. I thought I needed to be a pharmacist to go work at this company, and thank goodness I do not. I don't know what they're talking about on these panel calls whatsoever, but someone who's in the events world has to tell all these pharmacists what they need to do and where they need to be.
Sure. Okay, so that brings up a good point. Are there event manager jobs at like Capital One or Bank of America or Navy Federal Credit Union?
Absolutely.
Those are three places I was looking at with a senior the other day, so they came to mind. But
Yeah.
so those kinds of big companies would have an event manager in-house that then works with somebody like you at Mount Vernon to plan an event.
Yeah.
Okay.
For a
Yeah,
while, I wanted to go work for a sports team on their events
Ooh.
because I was really into sports, but it never panned out. But everywhere has an events manager.
Okay, that's helpful to know. Yeah. So Maghee, tell us about the galas, and do you guys do conferences too, you said?
Yes, we do conferences too. And I think for me, so we're the event planning company people hire when they don't have an events team. So we're called like a third party event planning company, and my team's very mission based. So we're what you would call like a center right event planning team. So we really work with like conservative groups. Everyone on my team is Catholic. So we're not explicitly a Catholic company, but I'll never have to plan an event that I morally will not align with. And so primarily there are these big galas, which are fundraising dinners to promote events and help them continue their cause. Like for example, one of our clients is the Catholic Information Center, which is the Opus Dei Center in DC. So every year they host this large fundraising dinner. And so it's a big gala in DC. And so that's kind of what a gala is. It's like a big fundraising dinner. And so it can span anywhere from 100 to 500, 600 guests. It's normally like a fancy dinner, and most of our clients will have like an awardee. They have events like once a year. So for example, the Catholic Information Center's gala is typically in October, and then we just had it, and then we'll have the next one next October. And so what typically happens is they'll award someone. So at past events, awardees have been President Donald Trump, former Vice President Pence. We've had Charlie Kirk at one of our events as well. He was at a conference. So there's a lot of moving parts. So then the conferences are definitely less fancy. Some of our conferences do end in a gala. So then that's like definitely a lot of planning that goes into that one, because it's both the gala planning and then the conference planning. But the conference suits a lot of our clients that have a lot of educational materials that they want to promote. So they'll bring in speakers. So our job is to kind of coordinate with those speakers. And part of the third party event planning role is we're the middleman between our client and then any vendors. So anything you see at the event, we have a hand in. And then we go to our client and say, do you like these flowers? Do you like these table linens? Do you like this photographer? So we kind of hire everyone and kind of manage and finagle all that, and then bring it to our client. And always with the end in mind of promoting our client's mission. So yeah, that's kind of like the gala conference dynamic that we have.
Okay. And what about you, Ashley? How are your events a little bit different from what they've shared?
I would say about half my events are pretty similar. So Mount Vernon, one thing that makes it interesting is we are actually primarily an outdoor space. So if you don't know Mount Vernon, it's George Washington's house. So we have a lot of interest. There are so many nonprofits in DC that want to host a conference at the library at the house of the first president. And so the conference world in the library feels very similar. It's keeping people on a timeline. Like we get a lot of groups that do keynote speakers and breakout sessions. And a part of my job is organizing the catering. So we have an in-house caterer, so it's creating menus and working with the wait staff for that. Like this morning I did a tea for the colonial dames out of the Soulgrave Manor from England. So that was like just kind of a one-off, but that was really interesting. Or we do get a lot of evening private events for different corporations. So I did one for like a wealth management company the other day, and that was, 100 people come in, they do a nice cocktail reception. So I booked the AV vendor, the caterer, I help them create the look for the evening. They take a tour of the mansion. So I'm working with our O&M staff. There's a lot of little details that matter, but like one of them was, centerpieces. What centerpiece, what do you want it to look like? And then when they go on this tour, do we have enough lanterns for them? Do we have the lights on at the mansion? Do we have the staff properly? What time do we want to turn on the reception music after people are speaking? So a lot of those little details I think matter as well. But then Mount Vernon hosts a lot of its own events. So we do we brought up the wine festival. That's about 6,000 people across a weekend. We bring in 20 different wineries from the state of Virginia. So a lot of those feel like massive crowd control. The other day we did Ken Burns' documentary preview, and that had about 5,000 people at once on the property. So when you're looking at a big estate outdoor location, you also have a lot of events that feel like festivals. And those take a much wider team and a lot more coordination between other departments. I mean, we had so many meetings about how do you move this many people? And what's our exit plan? And then you have to have meetings about emergency plans. We actually have a lot of meetings with local police. We hire a lot for those types of events. So it's kind of an interesting position when you have that larger outdoor scale that you work with.
Oh yeah, very different. Okay, I wouldn't have thought about like parking and security and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so Maghee, tell us about what's the hardest part of your job?
I would say the hardest part of my job is being the assistant to everyone in the company. So it's definitely a lot of just managing and balancing tasks. So a lot of multitasking, just on the day to day, and just really taking note of what my bosses tell me that needs to be done and being on time with deadlines. But then another hard aspect is just the day of the event. It's very high stress. There's so many moving parts, so many things to remember. So I feel like just remaining calm under pressure is something that's super important. No matter how long you've planned an event for, we start planning out, most of the time it's about a year. Something always goes wrong an event day. I'm sure you two can probably attest. So it's definitely a lot of, thinking on your feet and just, even if you're stressed, just remaining calm and finding a solution. So it definitely takes a lot of creativity. So I'd say that's another hard aspect of it, is just kind of managing the stress and staying calm, because thankfully we're not nurses or anything. No one's gonna die. So,
All right, Nicole, what about you? What's the hardest part of yours?
I would say sometimes it tends to be the clients that you work with. Sometimes I have fantastic clients when I was at the hotel that they could come in for their meeting and leave 3 hours later after what just felt like a coffee date planning. But sometimes you have clients that are very nitpicky about their contracts, or you're working on a deadline for all the people you're responsible to, whatever vendors you're reporting to, but the client isn't necessarily hitting your deadlines, so therefore you can't hit your own deadlines for the other side. So I would just say is that sometimes the biggest challenge is just serving as that liaison and being the gentle reminder to your client, whether it's the company you work for, the vendors that you're reporting to, or the person who's paying the bill at the end of the night is the most important, to make sure they're happy, but just reminding them and keeping them on task, because part of why you go into events, I like to say, is you are detail-oriented. So that means you know when things should be getting done, and they don't always get done by those deadlines, but how do you gently push to get that information so you're not holding up the kitchen ordering enough chicken for the event that's happening in 3 days because they haven't told you if 4 people are coming to their event or 45. So there's a lot of things that have to be done in a certain timeline, and I always found when I first started it was very hard to push back and being like, hey, no, that needs to be to me by the end of the day, because if you don't get it to me by the end of the day, you won't have chicken at your dinner in 3 days because our Cisco ordering only comes in on Thursdays. Like, there's a lot that you have to learn to navigate the professional side of the world and not have a meltdown, because sometimes they're having a meltdown in your face and you have to just kind of take it back and you're like, I understand whatever factors, but this is why. And just like learning to explain that side of things and not just be like, hey, there's just a deadline, you need to meet it. It's like, hey, let me explain why we have deadlines, why we have to get certain information by certain times, and why there are contracts in the event world, because everyone's expected to meet certain timelines. So navigating different personalities in the event world, it's a lot. But it's very entertaining too, let me tell you. The amount of vent sessions we would have, or funny stories where you pop out, you're like, you will not believe what this client just said to me, and you just hang up the phone and you go have that conversation, but on the phone you're like, yeah, that sounds great, thank you so much, have a good day.
Right, you've got to have somebody to vent to about it.
Yes.
Share that with. Yeah. Any other things to share about what's the hardest part?
I would say I would jump off of both of those. My boss at work coined the phrase FERP, which is a firm hand but with warmth. Because you get a lot of clients. If you have a client that isn't an event planner themselves, they don't understand why the deadlines make sense. And it is really easy to get frustrated because when you're caught between a vendor and a client, a lot of times vendors are very cut and dry personalities. And we work with a rental company to make a lot of events happen at Mount Vernon. And the rental company's like, well, I need a deadline or else I'm giving all 300 chairs to someone else. So tell me if you want them now or not. But when you're the coordinator, you're working with a different person's money. So you have to go back to the client and say, do you want this? Are you sure you want it? Do we build in a buffer? I've done that a lot with clients. And people are more understanding than you think, but it being such a quick job, you are the person that everyone just comes to for answers. And I remember the first time I did an event by myself, it really was a baptism by fire. And it was that you just have people that run up to you and they're like, we went off timeline, this person's speaking, my guest is late, can we push everything back? But then the kitchen, they're ready and they want to serve dinner. So it's running around and being able to keep a level head, but also I've often remind myself, I'm like, people are more understanding than it can feel in the moment. So communication across all boards is so key. And sometimes it's really easy to get overwhelmed, especially in a busy season. But just, a level of inner peace is very important.
Okay, yeah. So how has networking played a role in your career so far? Nicole, you want to start?
Sure, I'd be happy to start. So, my first job out of college, I got through Professor Mike Brown. So that was my first networking, was a text to him. The second job, when I went to work at the hotel, I just applied from a listing on LinkedIn. So you do sometimes hear back from them. I will say I applied to maybe 5 or 6 hotels coming back from Rome. And I think I heard from 2. So I would just say persevere with the LinkedIn applying because people will get back to you, but it's definitely a lot easier to get in with connections. So I very much value networking, and my current job I got from networking with a friend. I'm involved in the Catholic sports community up in Alexandria, and one of the guys that I've been playing wiffle ball and volleyball or whatever for the last 4 years with, he's been working at the company I now work. And he would just come to me, because he knew I worked in hotels, every time he came home from a conference and tell me some story or be like, have you ever heard of this happening in a hotel? And we would talk on. And then over the summer, and he kind of knew I was looking, and over the summer he texted me, he's like, hey, we have a position opening, you should apply. And here I am. So I definitely think there's a lot of power in networking, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a formal job fair. Just like striking up conversations, learning what people do for work, and it could be 3 or 4 years down the road that pays off.
Yeah, I would say for me, like, networking was everything. I found out about my job through the McFadden family, just at their house for Easter. So I would definitely encourage you all. I feel like anytime you're talking to an adult, you kind of have to think about it as an opportunity for networking. If I had been rude to Mr. McFadden freshman year of college, I don't know if he would have told me about this job. And then his daughter, Maria, who I work with, she called him before, like, kind of in my interview process, and asked him if there was a reason they shouldn't hire me. So I would definitely just encourage you all, whenever you're talking to an adult, just be aware of that. But also don't be afraid to talk to adults. They all want to help you, especially in the Christendom community. We have alumni in all different fields. So really just feel encouraged to go up to them, strike up a conversation. It can even be your friend's parents. Like, that was the case with me. So I just want to encourage you all really to feel confident in doing that.
Yeah. What about you? Any networking to share?
I would say I kind of just applied to my job, and don't be afraid to do that. Networking helped me get the internship because there was an older alumni who had worked at Heritage Foundation at the time when I was applying.
Sure.
And I think having an internship helped my application. But when it came to Mount Vernon, I was working a random admin job at a church down in Woodbridge. And I had been looking, and I probably applied to over 50 different places in the DMV area. And I looked up Mount Vernon, and I was like, they have events, they have to have a department. So I just went on the employment page, saw it, applied, and got the job. So, I think there's a level, networking is definitely important, and you find people, like, even I would say I network events, like pay attention to the wait staff. The people that don't seem important, like you might go and be like, I want to talk to the manager because the manager is going to make something happen. But then if you talk to someone at a lower level, the manager might look at them in a similar way and be like, why should I care about this person? So networking can happen everywhere, but also at the same time, like, don't be afraid to just apply. Sometimes it just works out. So.
Yeah. Okay. Tell us a little bit about how your faith plays into your work. So Maghee, you said that everybody you work with is Catholic and you're doing conservative events and stuff like that. Is that probably not similar for the two of you? So tell us about how you've navigated that, Nicole.
For me, I did not work in a Catholic faith-based world. Luckily, I haven't had any issues with events from a moral standpoint, which is definitely, it was a huge consideration for me when I was in the wedding industry. But for me, actually at the hotel, I slowly and surely started being a little more forward about my faith. All my coworkers knew on Fridays, don't ask Nicole to go eat something with meat, she'll say no. And I discovered that several of my coworkers had been raised Catholic. They were later in life, and most of them had fallen away from their faith. And just, for me, it was those daily conversations I would have over lunch. I'm not saying anyone's converted back to Catholicism, but they would just question, or I would say something that I would have done over the weekend or something related to one of our religious observations. They're like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. Like, that used to be a thing. Recently, a few months ago, they were trying to remember what the 10 Commandments were in the hallway, and I laughed my head off in my office just with the door closed because I thought it was hilarious that they were trying to guess and they made up a few commandments. I really just didn't have it in me at the time to step out, but there was just a lot. I think living out your faith in the professional world says a lot about you. I was very well respected for standing up for my faith. It took me a year or two to show up to the hotel wearing my ashes on my forehead. I used to go to 7 p.m. Mass on Ash Wednesday just because I was like, I see hundreds of people throughout the day. How can I do it? And then a few years into the world of the hotel, I was like, I don't care. I'm on lobby duty on Wednesday mornings at 7 in the morning, and I have to greet guests, and I'm going to 6 a.m. Mass because that's important to me and my faith, and it's an outward symbol of our faith. And I did that this past Lent, and I had probably 5 or 10 hotel guests, not people I work with, come up and ask me where the closest Catholic church was, where could they get ashes. I did have someone ask if we were giving them out here at the hotel, and a few other things like that. But I think there's always ways to evangelize your faith, whether or not you're in a Catholic setting or not. I wish I worked with Catholic coworkers. It would be amazing, and it would be nice to share that. But I think there's always ways to grow, and you don't have to work in a Catholic environment to live out your faith.
Thank you. What about you, Ashley?
Yeah, I'd say it's pretty similar. I work with so many different people. Most of them are not Catholic. A lot of them are not religious in any way. And I think, like Nicole said, like just living out your faith and not being afraid to show it. A lot of people are more interested than you think if you don't, push it on them. Like, people become inquisitive. And I think working with people who are different from you also allows you to live a life of grace because it requires a level of humility and charity to try to understand someone, especially someone who quite honestly might want to make fun of you, or they might, kind of scoff at, what you believe and what you say, but it gives you opportunities to grow yourself and also, be able to learn about others, see where they're coming from. And there's a lot of the virtues are very important in your ability to work. I started following like St. Joseph the Worker, and find little ways yourself, like when you go into the office every day, say a little prayer to yourself, something that keeps you centered, because it's also very easy to get wrapped up in the world, especially when you're surrounded by people that are not of your faith, but to keep it at the center of your life is really, really vital.
Okay. All right, a couple last few questions, and then we'll turn it over to you all for a few questions. What's the most fun part of your job? Maghee, you want to go?
There are definitely a lot of fun aspects. I'd say I really enjoy traveling, so I do really love that. We're doing an event at Mar-a-Lago in Florida, which is Trump's private residence, so I'm excited about that. But that brings a lot of pressure, so it's a pro and a con, I guess. But yeah, so I do love the travel, and then I love working with people. So I really enjoy working with all of our clients, all like the hands-on. So while there is a lot of behind the scenes, there's a lot of hands-on work too, which I really enjoy. I also love with event planning, it's very creative. I love design, I love floral design, so it's fun with events. There's graphic design involved, there's some floral design, there's all the aesthetics of the event, so I enjoy that as well. So I'd say I really like the moving parts of it, the travel, the event itself, the clients we work with, the guests that come to the events. So.
Okay. Nicole, what about you?
I would also say a lot of it is the moving pieces. I loved event days. I mean, my feet would kill me at the end of the day. I would say you have to expect to be on your feet a lot as an event planner, but I loved all the pieces. I actually kind of loved when we had quick turns. It kind of reminds me of, I mean, Ashley and I did stage management together here at Christendom, but whenever there was like a really fast set change, I was like, oh my gosh, it's like a challenge, and like, can we make it happen? So I really like the event days themselves and just seeing all your hard work pay off. I also like traveling. I'm like looking forward to that now more in this role. I loved the hotel and getting to know the hotel employees. I just really enjoy working with people. And I think that was like the biggest reason I wanted to be in a hospitality centered job, is just the interactions you get to have with people, and learning their stories. Like there's a lot of, like, event days are very hectic, but there's also downtime. There's times where like dinner's served, dancing's begun, or whatever, your speaker's going and you're in the back talking to the servers and just hearing about their life. And I will tell you, when I left that hotel after 4.5 years, or 3.5 years, there were a lot of tearful goodbyes because of the coworkers that I got to know. People I would have never interacted with me outside, like 40 years older than I am, the servers that have been at the hotel for 20 years. It's just certain people, you really get to form bonds, traumatic bonds sometimes, but it's just like really, it's very fulfilling. I think it's a very fulfilling career that we've all chosen.
Ashley, what's most fun for you?
I would say I do like when you get to be creative, and that's a lot of fun because there's a lot of moments when you don't, because you do get those clients that tell you exactly what they want and you have to like do it to the letter. But when you get to be creative, and it's similar to what Nicole said, like you get to see the fruit of your work. And you spend months and months and countless emails and meetings trying to make something happen. And then when you get to the event, you're like, oh, it all came together. Wow, like that all like culminated in something that I can like see, and people enjoy it. And a lot of clients, like the gratitude that they have afterwards kind of adds to it and makes it all worth it. You're like, I've done all of this for somebody, and it came out really well and they were pleased. So.
All right, well, let's end with this. What advice, tips, what do you wish you had known before going in? What would you tell the students here today if they want to go into event planning of any kind? What would you leave them with? What should they do while they're here at school? Nicole?
I would say just make the most of any opportunity you're given and put yourself out there. As an event planner, you not have to always be extroverted, but you have to be willing to put yourself out there. You have to be willing to go up and ask the question. Like, someone's going to be coming to you with an issue, and then you might not have ever talked to this AV guy, and you have to go introduce yourself in 10 seconds and be like, and by the way, this is what the issue is and how can we fix it? So I think there's a level that you need to be able to be comfortable going out and seeking opportunities, because you're going to have to seek them in that career path. And just the other thing that I will say that I didn't put enough emphasis on when I was first applying to jobs and when I now was applying this time, just like the culture of the work environment, and most specifically, the culture that you're gonna have with the interactions with your boss. I've had jobs where I have not liked my bosses, and it's brought me very close to leaving. And then the boss left first, and I stayed, and I had a new boss, and it realized I didn't have a problem with the job. I had a problem with the interactions I had with this boss. And I think something that was asked of me of an interview recently was like, what sort of leader are you, but also how do you like to be led? Like, you're always going to have a supervisor in a position, and what's the best work style you're going to have with the superior above you. And that was huge that they even asked me that in an interview. I was like, green flag, because I think it really impacts your day-to-day. You're going to work with clients, you're going to work with other staff at an event, but who you're interacting with the most is the people on your team and your boss. And if you like who you're working with and working for, you'll love your job.
That's great. What about
Yeah,
you, Maggie?
so building on that, I would totally agree with that. Your job is going to, most likely, whatever job you're doing is going to be hard. So who you work with really can make or break it. So definitely in that interview, ask the question about, what do you like about this job and what's the culture like at your corporation. But I'd also say, so I'm really new. Like I just graduated in 2024. I feel like I should be sitting in the audience. But so right off the bat, when you've graduated, you're so excited to be graduated in the workforce. Everything is new. My company, they have a very specific way of doing things. And so it was hard to learn. So I would definitely say like that fall right after graduation, just be prepared for it to be hard, but be prepared to be willing to work hard, because if you put in the effort, you ask good questions, you're gonna learn the ropes. So just kind of be easy on yourself and know you're gonna make mistakes. I think that was hard for me at first to realize, in college when you make mistakes, study for a test, you get a bad grade, it just affects yourself. But if you make a mistake at an event, it affects the whole team. So, but learning, instead of letting those mistakes kind of cripple you, which at times I felt like I could do, especially last fall when I was so new, just really learning from them. So like, for example, this one time we have to wear radios for our events so that we're connected with the different vendors. So I ordered radios, but I didn't follow up enough on the tracking information and they didn't come. And my team had to, pivot and use text, whatever. So it worked out, but it affected my team. So then I was really upset at first, but then I was like, I'm going to learn from this. And so it was a hard lesson to learn because it affected my team, but now I always check for the tracking. I always follow up with our vendor. I always watch and make sure that they arrive. So that's just a small example, but just know it's going to be hard and you're going to make mistakes, but learn from them instead of letting it, lower your opinion of yourself or think that you're bad at your job. It can only help you, honestly. And then this is just a small thing. In the interview process, it's really important to dress well for the interview, even if it's a Zoom interview. Your employers or your potential future employers really do notice if you dress well, and then if you write a thank you note. So those are just like two small tips, but just really keeping those two things in mind when applying is super important.
Thank you. All right, Ashley, what tips do you want to leave them with?
I guess one thing that comes to mind, kind of jumping off of both of you, is like, don't ever think any job is too small. When you get to a level, like a lot of the times in my position now, most of my work is telling other people what to do and providing a lot of instruction. But it's important to remember like what the small tasks are and being willing to step in. I guess it's kind of like in theater where you're like, no role is too small, and you're like, no job is too little. And you get a lot of support from your staff as well when they see that you're willing to, instead of me pointing at someone else and saying, pick up all those chairs, I'm like, I'll help you because I can and I'm there. And you get the support from your team, and especially your support staff matters. The planning staff make the event happen. We bring it together, but if I didn't have custodians in the room and if I didn't have waiters serving, the event couldn't happen. It would not go. So I think that level of humility, that's just kind of an important virtue to follow, but also, recognizing that any little job, any little task that you do is important. And also you can market anything in a job interview. You can take any little volunteer work you do, anything small, and you can apply it to a job position. So it's all about your ability to sell yourself. And I know when you get into the interview process, it can be a little nerve-wracking. I did 3 interviews for Mount Vernon. One was over the phone, then I did one in person, and then my last one was a panel. And the panel interviews are scary. But I think if you can practice, I would practice with friends. And it's kind of silly because you start laughing with each other and you can't take each other seriously. But it's important to practice through the interview questions to anticipate, learn how to tell your story and how you can tell your story and how that you can apply that to any job, really.
Yes. And that leads me to remind you all that in EFL senior year, Mr. McFadden has an interviewing class. So all of you seniors who just took it this fall, you know how to tell a story in the interview process. You are also welcome to come practice your interview with me. I've done it with several people. By the way, my biggest tip in case you're going to do it is practice your tell me about yourself answer before you even come to see me, because I have spent half an hour just going over that question with students because it's really hard to nail. So you are welcome to come see me anytime to do that. All right, we will take like 3 questions. Maria is in the back. Come on up. I saw a hand over here all the way, and then, yeah. Start over here.
Hi, thank you for coming tonight. I know at least one of you mentioned a busy season. Like, what are the busier times during the year that you're working more hours?
When's your busy season?
I think it depends on each of us could probably say a different answer because it depends on what field of events you're getting in. If you're in the corporate association conference world, busy season is generally September to November and March to June. They avoid summer because kids are out on breaks, so people aren't going to pay money to go to a conference when no one's home to watch their children. And they avoid holidays, which is nice, but it depends on what area of events you're working in. I think you guys might have different definitions. But
I would say ours is pretty similar. Spring and fall are gala season, and so you have a lot of events. It's also beautiful weather means people want to throw parties. And so you work a lot. I would say with the catering side, we do get a lot of holiday parties. So December actually ends up being a very busy month for us. So if you're ever in the restaurant world, holiday parties will dominate your December.
Yes. Maggie?
Because we mainly work in gala season, I would say fall and spring for us. We slow down in the summer because conferences, but occasionally we'll have like one event in the summer and sometimes a few in the winter. So, but fall and spring are mainly our busy season.
And I would say probably wedding season is mostly spring and summer, right?
yes, the fall actually is the October is the most popular month to get married. Actually, it took over in 2019.
Okay.
So there's your new
Yes, trivia for today.
yeah.
Okay, thank you all. All right, Tess has a question. Maria, pass it down to her.
Hello, thank you for coming. I was wondering, do you think that it would be helpful to get any certificates? Like, I know that working with SAC, I know there are opportunities to get certain certificates concerning food, alcohol, that sort of thing. Would you recommend such certificates to help you get into the event planning world? And if so, which ones would especially help?
Who wants to take that?
I would say they seem important. There's a big one that is the CMP, which is the Certified Meeting Planners Certificate. I don't have it. It hasn't shown up in my line of work as necessary. I do know a lot of people get it. I think, honestly, with events, you can use it to sell yourself well, but it's not really that required. A lot of it is the work that you have will show for it. So when you start applying to jobs, I don't think you need to rush into that, but I don't know if it's different in a hotel or not.
You also don't need any certificates. I have my eye on the CMP. But one thing I did do during COVID, just when I was working in the wedding industry, is like all seated, which is now called PRISM, but there's different programs that I'm sure all of us use for diagramming. They just have a free certificate class that you can take. I think I took it for a month, like once a week, took the exams every week. It was really simple. It wasn't complicated. But that is something I would just recommend doing. It's learning how to diagram digitally and how to take a space. Even they just go over like, hey, here's a rectangle table and how do I space plan around it? And it's fun. You can turn the 3D model on and see your room come to life from a 2D format. But it's something really simple. Like LinkedIn has some of those classes type things. I wouldn't say that certifications is necessary in our line of work until you get into the corporate world, and some companies would require a CMP, but that also you can't get a CMP until you have a certain amount of experience anyways, so it's not something like college students would be after. I would just say the best work you can do is say, hey, over my summer and winter breaks, I worked holiday season at the local country club or the local restaurant, and just understanding that backside of work. And I think what you're saying is the support staff, if you've ever been a support staff, you're way more likely to want to help them out down the road, because cleaning up at 11 p.m. after an event is no fun. But if 3 more people help, we're now leaving at 11:30 instead of midnight, and you will be their best friend.
Maghee, any thoughts?
Just, I guess, to echo that, like, I don't think it's necessary, but I think it could set you apart from other candidates if you spend your summers or your summer break learning and having that bullet point on your resume. So while I think the practical experience is the most important, like Nicole was saying, it's not going to hurt you if you have, extra experience from these courses.
Michael, you had a question? Come on over here, Maria.
Hi, I was just wondering, how much of your work is done in like crunching numbers? So like supply lists, how much of everything do we need, budgeting, what does everything cost? Just how much work with numbers do you do?
Yeah, or is there somebody on your team that kind of handles that part? Maghee?
I do a lot because I do catering. And so catering, and we do a lot of contracts as well. So as the venue, I have to do a contract for every single rental and every single food order. Now we have an overarching financial team, so they deal with a budget, but we do have to meet as a team with the CFO of the company and determine our annual budget. And that does include supplies. With a restaurant team, you burn through a lot of supplies annually. So there's like rates of attrition that you have to determine. Like I look at 5 or 6 calendars every single day, and you're jumping between numbers. When we finish an event, we do what we call a P&L, which is a profit loss report. So I would say, I think, at least as a venue-based position, it's pretty frequent, but we have like an overarching financial team that keeps us in check. But with every event, there's a mix of profit, loss, how much did it cost? Do we change our rates? Do we change the cost of venues? Like, we have different prices for different venue spaces, and this happens a lot with food. Suddenly, eggs cost more. So now every breakfast has to cost more. So trying to create those numbers. So I would say at my job, it's pretty frequent. But
Maghee?
Yeah, for us too, we work with numbers quite a bit. We don't have a separate financial team, so we draft the budget, our team, and then we'll work with our client and they approve the budget. So everything that we do, we just have to make sure falls within those numbers. And it's like a continuous having to update the budget. All the little things really do add up. So I'd say, yeah, a lot of it is looking at the numbers and the breakdown of everything and all those details. So yeah, we work with numbers quite a bit.
I kind of say the same in the hotel environment. I did do P&Ls, budgets on a operational scale, but then also presenting it to the client. So for every single event, you're putting together a cost estimate that includes their rooms, how many rooms. It's all in Excel, and so the math is being done for you. But you have to also have some common sense to look at it and be like, those aren't working, and then send to finance and be like, can you figure out what's wrong with my Excel spreadsheet? Or you do it yourself, and sometimes there's a tax issue that's playing out. Now I'm being given a budget for an event. It's being decided by our board of directors, but it's our expectations to meet that for them. And hey, if we're going to spend a little more here because AV suddenly costs like $3,000 more than you're planning for, well, how can I still have our end total be the same? So where other areas can we save? So there's a lot of balancing, because none of us are bringing $100,000 to put this event on, but the client is expecting you, within reason, because sometimes they don't have reasonable budgets, to make this event happen with the money they're providing you. So how can you balance that out? And some things are obviously, eggs did skyrocket, and it was just wild in the hotel setting, and we were feeding 500 people every single day with eggs. So how do you come up with that extra money? Are we getting cheaper bacon now? Or different things like that. So I think there's always going to be a side where numbers come into your job. I'm not necessarily always the one fixing the Excel spreadsheets, but I can point out if something's wrong, and then someone else can fix it, and just being held accountable to those numbers.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. Okay, if you all have more questions for them that you wanted to ask, you can come up and chat with them for just a little bit after. Thank you all so much for coming. Please give them a huge round of applause.